The bullet whistled past Quinn Callahan's ear, so close he felt the heat of it. And in that moment of near-death clarity, he realized his water canteen had been bone dry for 2 days, and he was going to die out here in this God-forsaken Arizona desert, whether the bandits got him or the sun did. He spurred his horse forward, the animal wheezing beneath him, foam gathering at its mouth as they crashed through scrub brush and over rocks that could snap a leg with one wrong step. The 3 riders behind him fired again, their whoops echoing off the Red Canyon walls, and Quinn knew with absolute certainty that he had made a terrible mistake leaving Tucson without proper supplies, without a guide, without any damn sense at all. His horse stumbled, recovered, then stumbled again. Quinn felt the animal's strength failing and his heart sank because a man on foot in the Sonoran Desert in July of 1877 was a dead man walking. He had seen the bleached bones along the trail enough times to know. The horse went down hard, pitching Quinn forward over its neck. He hit the ground rolling, instinct taking over, and came up running even as his vision swam from the impact and the relentless heat that had to be well over 100 degrees. The riders were closing in. Quinn could hear their laughter now, could make out their faces beneath their hats. Outlaws, the kind that preyed on lone travelers stupid enough to venture into Apache country without protection. He had his rifle, but it had flown from his hands when he fell, and his revolver felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds as he drew it with shaking fingers. The sun blazed overhead like the eye of an angry god, and sweat poured down his face, stinging his eyes, making everything shimmer and dance. Then he saw her. She materialized from behind a massive saguaro cactus like a spirit, a woman in buckskin, her long black hair braided down her back, and before Quinn could process what was happening, she grabbed his arm and yanked him sideways with surprising strength. They dove behind a cluster of rocks just as bullets pinged off stone where he had been standing. The woman pressed a finger to his lips, her dark eyes intense and intelligent, and Quinn found himself staring at her like a fool even as death rode toward them. She was Apache, he realized. Young, maybe 20 or 21, with high cheekbones and skin the color of copper. And she was moving with purpose, pulling something from the leather pouch at her waist. She gestured for him to stay down, then rose slightly and did something Quinn could not quite see. A moment later, one of the pursuing horses screamed and reared, throwing its rider. The other 2 horses spooked, dancing sideways, and in the confusion the woman grabbed Quinn's hand and pulled him deeper into the rocks. They ran. Quinn had no idea where they were going, could barely see straight from dehydration and exhaustion, but the woman moved like water over stone, never hesitating, always finding the path. She led him through a narrow cleft in the rocks that he never would have spotted on his own, then down into a ravine that provided blessed shade. His legs gave out and he collapsed against the cool stone wall, gasping. The woman crouched beside him, studying his face with those dark, penetrating eyes. Then she reached for a small water skin at her hip and held it to his lips. Quinn drank greedily, the water tasting of leather and minerals and life itself. She pulled it away before he could finish, shaking her head when he reached for more. "Slow," she said in accented English. "Too much, you sick." Quinn nodded, trying to catch his breath. "Thank you," he managed. "They would have killed me." "Yes." She looked back the way they had come, listening. "They not follow here, sacred place, they afraid. But not you." Something that might have been amusement flickered across her face. "I am Paloma Blackstone. My mother Apache. My father white trapper, dead 5 years. I not afraid of spirits or white men with guns." Quinn noticed she had not used a different last name, but he did not dwell on it. "Quinn Callahan, and I owe you my life." "You owe me water," Paloma said practically, and food, and stupidity for being out here alone with no supplies. Despite everything, Quinn almost laughed. Fair enough. I had supplies, had a partner too. He robbed me 3 days ago while I slept, took everything except my horse and my guns. Paloma's expression darkened. White men, always taking. The words hung heavy in the air between them, weighted with history and pain that Quinn could only imagine. He had heard the stories, of course. Everyone had. The wars between the army and the Apache had been brutal, with atrocities on both sides, though the Apache had lost their lands, their way of life, everything. And here he was, another white man in Apache territory, taking up space he had no right to claim. I am sorry, he said quietly, for what my people have done to yours. Paloma looked at him for a long moment as if taking his measure. Words easy. You still stupid white man who cannot survive 1 week in desert. Can you teach me? The question came out before Quinn had fully formed the thought, but once spoken, he realized he meant it with his whole heart. Your survival skills, the things you know that I do not, I want to learn. She studied him again, and Quinn found himself holding his breath, waiting for her answer. He could not explain the sudden urgency he felt, the bone-deep certainty that this meeting was important, that this woman was important in a way he did not yet understand. Why? Paloma asked finally. Why you want learn Apache ways? You just want go back to your town, your people. I do not have people, Quinn said, and the honesty of it surprised him. My parents died when I was 16. Been drifting ever since, working cattle drives, trying to save enough to buy land of my own. Thought maybe Arizona was the place, but I do not know anything about this country. Do not know how to read it, how to survive in it, but you do. Paloma was quiet for a moment, her gaze distant. Then she stood abruptly. Come, sun too hot now. We go to better shelter. Then I decide if you worth teaching. She led him deeper into the ravine, moving with that same fluid grace, and Quinn followed, his legs protesting but his determination solid. They walked for perhaps 20 minutes, the ravine gradually widening into a small canyon with a few scraggly mesquite trees providing patches of shade. Paloma stopped at what looked like a blank rock wall, then disappeared into an opening Quinn had not seen until she moved through it. Inside was a shallow cave, surprisingly cool, with evidence that someone used it regularly. There were woven baskets, clay pots, and bundles of dried plants hanging from natural hooks in the stone. Paloma gestured for Quinn to sit, then busied herself building a small fire using methods he did not recognize. Within minutes, she had coaxed flames from what looked like nothing but sticks and friction. First lesson, she said, not looking at him. Fire without matches. You watch. Quinn watched as she demonstrated again, explaining the technique in her careful English. Her hands moved with practiced efficiency, and he found himself mesmerized not just by the skill but by the quiet confidence with which she moved. This was a woman who knew exactly who she was and what she could do, who needed nothing from anyone yet had chosen to help him anyway. Why did you save me? He asked as she set a clay pot of water to heat over the flames. You could have let them kill me, one less white man in Apache country. Paloma added something to the water, herbs of some kind, and the smell that rose from the pot was earthy and slightly bitter. My mother teach me all life sacred. She teach me Apache ways about living with land, about honor. But she also teach me hatred only poison yourself. She looked at him then, and her eyes were sad. She die on reservation 2 years ago. Broken heart, broken spirit. I not want die that way, I choose different path. What path is that? Survive. Live free, even if mean live alone in desert. I not let anyone break me, white man or Apache who give up and go to reservation. The fierce pride in her voice stirred something in Quinn's chest, a respect deeper than any he had felt before. This woman had lost everything and chosen to keep fighting, to keep living on her own terms. It shamed him, his own aimless drifting, his lack of purpose or direction. Paloma poured the herbal tea into a small clay cup and handed it to him. "Drink. Good for heat, sickness, for strength." Quinn drank. It tasted terrible, but he finished every drop. Paloma watched him with what might have been approval, then poured a cup for herself. "You want learn Apache ways I teach," she said. "But you must promise things. First, you listen and not argue when I tell you how to do. Second, you respect the land, take only what you need. Third, you never tell others about this place, about me. White men would hunt me if they know Apache woman live free out here." "I promise all of that," Quinn said immediately. "On my honor." "White man honor," Paloma said, but there was no real bite to it. "We see. Rest now. When sun lower, I teach you about water, about finding it when eyes see nothing." Quinn lay back against his bedroll, exhaustion pulling at him like an undertow. The last thing he saw before sleep claimed him was Paloma sitting by the fire, her profile outlined in flame, looking like something eternal and untouchable. And he felt his heart do something strange in his chest, something that felt like recognition. When he woke, the light had changed, the brutal afternoon heat giving way to the slightly less brutal heat of late afternoon. Paloma was waiting, already standing, her leather water skin in hand. "Come," she said. "First lesson about water, most important skill in desert." They climbed out of the canyon and Paloma led him across the desert floor, pointing out things Quinn never would have noticed on his own. She showed him how to identify arroyos where water might collect after rain, how to spot the particular green of plants that indicated moisture below ground. She taught him to look for animal trails, for the flight patterns of birds, for the subtle signs that spoke of water to those who knew how to read them. "Here," she said, stopping near a cluster of prickly pear cactus. "You see this plant? Inside is water, but you must know how to get without killing yourself on spines." She demonstrated, using a flat rock to carefully scrape away the spines, then cutting into the pad with her knife. Clear liquid seeped out and she collected it in her hand, offering it to Quinn. He drank, surprised by the slightly sweet taste. This could save a life. "Yes, but take too much, plant die. Always leave some, always thank plant for gift. This is Apache way. Everything has spirit, everything connected." They spent the next 2 hours like that, Paloma teaching and Quinn absorbing everything like a man dying of thirst finally finding water. She showed him which insects were safe to eat, which plants had edible roots, how to recognize rattlesnake dens and avoid them. She taught him how to walk in the desert, how to conserve energy and moisture, how to use his body's own signals to gauge danger. As they worked, Quinn found himself watching her more than the lessons sometimes. The way she moved through the desert like she was part of it, the way her face softened when she spoke of her mother, the rare smile that transformed her entire countenance when he successfully identified a mesquite tree by its bark pattern alone. There was something about her that called to something in him, some lonely part of his soul that had been wandering aimless for years suddenly finding true north. "Why are you staring?" Paloma asked without looking at him, and Quinn realized he had been caught. "Sorry. I was just thinking you are remarkable. The way you know all this, the way you have survived out here alone, it is extraordinary." Paloma's shoulders tensed slightly. "Not extraordinary, just Apache. This is knowledge my people have for hundreds of years, thousands maybe. White men come with their horses and guns and think they conquer land, but land cannot be conquered, can only be lived with, respected, understood." "Teach me to understand it," Quinn said. "Please. I want to learn everything you can show me." She looked at him then, really looked at him, and Quinn felt like she was seeing straight through to his core, weighing and measuring everything he was. Whatever she saw must have satisfied her because she nodded slowly. Okay, but learning take time. You not learn everything in one day, 1 week. Maybe you stay, learn properly. I would like that, Quinn said, and meant it with an intensity that surprised him. I would like that very much. They returned to the cave as the sun set, painting the desert in shades of orange and purple and gold. Paloma prepared a simple meal of rabbit she had caught earlier, roasting it over the fire with wild onions and herbs. Quinn watched her work, amazed at how effortlessly she moved through these tasks that would have baffled him completely. Tomorrow I teach you about tracking, Paloma said as they ate. How to read story in sand and dirt, how to know what animal passed, how long ago were it going. And the day after that, maybe hunting. Maybe more plants, depend on what we see, what land tells us it's time to learn. She looked at him across the fire. You good student today. You listen, you try, you not complain. Better than I expect from white cowboy. Quinn felt absurdly pleased by the praise. I want to prove I am worth teaching, and I want to prove not all white men are thieves and killers. I know not all white men bad, Paloma said quietly. My father was good man. He loved my mother truly, treat her as equal, that rare thing. When he die, my mother could have go back to her people, but they on reservation, dying slow death. She choose stay in desert, teach me everything she know. She die free, that what she want. I am sorry for your loss, Quinn said. Both your parents, that is a heavy burden to carry alone. We all carry burdens, you carry yours too, I think, I see it in eyes. Quinn was quiet for a moment, surprised by her perceptiveness. My parents died of cholera. I had a younger sister. She died too. I was supposed to take care of them, but I could not stop the sickness, could not do anything but watch them fade. Paloma's expression softened. You were young, sickness not your fault. I know that in my head, but my heart has not quite caught up yet. Quinn stared into the flames. I think that is why I drift so much, looking for something to hold on to, some place that feels like home again. Home not place, Paloma said. Home is feeling here. She tapped her chest over her heart. You take it with you or you never find it anywhere. The wisdom in her words struck Quinn silent. They finished eating in companionable quiet, and when Paloma showed him how to bank the fire properly for the night, he paid close attention, committing every detail to memory. That night, lying on his bedroll with the stars visible through the cave opening, Quinn found himself thinking about Paloma in the darkness just a few feet away. Thinking about her strength, her knowledge, the pain she carried, and the way she had transformed it into survival rather than surrender. He had known her for less than a day, but already he felt something shifting inside him, some fundamental reorientation of his world. The days that followed took on a rhythm that felt almost sacred. Each morning Paloma woke him before dawn, when the desert was still cool and the animals most active. She taught him to track, and Quinn discovered she had not exaggerated the skill involved. Every overturned pebble, every scratched branch, every faint impression in the dust told a story if you knew how to read it. Javelina, Paloma said, pointing to tracks Quinn would have walked right past. 3 of them, adult with 2 young. Pass here maybe 3 hours ago, moving toward water source. She traced the tracks with her finger, showing him the distinctive pattern, the depth that indicated weight and speed. Quinn crouched beside her, studying the marks, acutely aware of her proximity, the scent of sage and wood smoke that clung to her clothes. How do you know 3 hours? Edges of track. See how they still sharp here but starting to break down where wind touches. Morning wind started maybe 2.5 hours ago. Track made before wind. It seemed impossible to Quinn that anyone could deduce so much from so little, but Paloma proved it again and again. finding and interpreting signs that were invisible to his untrained eyes. She showed him how to distinguish between the tracks of different snakes, how to identify the scratchings of birds versus lizards, how to read the story of a predator's hunt in the scattered evidence left behind. By the end of the first week, Quinn could find water with reasonable success, could build a friction fire on the third try, and could recognize a dozen different desert plants by sight. He felt proud of his progress until Paloma reminded him he had learned perhaps 1% of what he needed to know to truly survive alone. "But you learning fast," she added, and Quinn treasured that small praise more than he wanted to admit. The second week brought hunting lessons. Paloma taught him to make snares from yucca fiber, to identify game trails, to move silently through the brush. She was a patient teacher but demanding, making him repeat tasks until he got them right, never accepting half measures or good enough. "Desert not forgive mistakes," she said when Quinn complained about resetting a snare for the 5th time. "You do it wrong, you starve. You starve, you die. I teach you right way, only way." Quinn learned. And as he learned, he found himself drawn more deeply into Paloma's world, into the intricate web of relationships between plants and animals and land that governed survival out here. He began to see the desert not as a hostile wasteland, but as a complex, living system that could sustain those who understood its rhythms. He also found himself increasingly drawn to Paloma herself. The way she moved with unconscious grace, the rare smile that lit her face when he successfully completed a difficult task, the gentleness in her hands when she treated the cut he got from a careless encounter with a kala cactus. She was unlike any woman he had ever known, fierce and independent yet capable of surprising tenderness. One evening during the 3rd week, as they sat by the fire eating roasted quail, Quinn worked up the courage to ask the question that had been nagging at him. "Why do you really live out here alone? You could go to a town, find work, have an easier life." Paloma was quiet for a long time, staring into the flames. When she finally spoke, her voice was soft but edged with steel. "You think town would welcome Apache woman? White men see me, they see squaw savage, something to use or drive away. Apache see me, they see half-breed, not really one of people. I belong nowhere, so I make my own place. Here I free. Here no one owns me, controls me, tells me what I must be." "I see you," Quinn said quietly. "And I see someone brave and skilled and kind. I see someone I admire more than anyone I have ever met." Paloma looked at him then, her dark eyes reflecting firelight, and something passed between them, some recognition that made Quinn's heart pound in his chest. But she looked away, her expression closing. "You see what you want to see. When you ready go back to white man world, you forget about Apache woman in desert." "No," Quinn said with absolute certainty. "I will never forget you. Even if I left tomorrow, which I have no intention of doing, I would carry you with me always." Paloma stood abruptly. "You talk foolish. You barely know me." "I know enough. I know you saved my life. I know you have taught me more in 3 weeks than I learned in the previous 10 years. I know that when you smile, truly smile, it feels like the sun coming up. And I know that being here with you feels more like home than anywhere I have been since my family died." "Quinn," Paloma said, and the sound of his name in her mouth made something warm bloom in his chest. "This cannot be. You and me, we from different worlds. We are in the same world right now." Quinn stood too, moving closer. "And I do not care about different. I only care about what I feel, what I see in your eyes when you look at me sometimes. Tell me you feel nothing and I will never speak of it again." Paloma stood frozen, her eyes searching his face, and Quinn could see the war playing out in her expression. Fear, longing, hope, doubt, all flickering across her features like flames. "I cannot," she whispered finally. "I cannot say I feel nothing." "Then what do you feel?" Quinn reached out slowly, giving her every chance to pull away, and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. His fingers brushed her cheek and she shivered. "I feel afraid," Paloma admitted. "Afraid to want something that cannot be, afraid to trust. My mother trust my father and he good man, but he die and leave her alone with half-white child in world that hate both. I not want that pain." "Life is pain," Quinn said gently. "Loss and heartbreak are guaranteed, but so is joy if we are brave enough to reach for it. I am not asking you to leave your desert or change who you are. I am only asking you to let me stay, to let me learn not just survival skills but everything about you. Let me earn your trust." Paloma closed her eyes, and when she opened them again they were bright with unshed tears. "You really want stay? Give up white man world for this." She gestured around at the cave, the desert beyond. "This is more real than that world ever was," Quinn said. "You are more real. These weeks with you have mattered more than the previous 25 years of my life. So yes, I want to stay. If you will have me." Paloma raised her hand and placed it over his heart, feeling it thunder beneath her palm. Then she took his hand and placed it over her own heart, beating just as fast. "I feel it too," she said quietly. "This thing between us. But Quinn, if you stay, life will be hard. We cannot go to towns together, people not accept. We must live out here, surviving day by day." "Then we survive together," Quinn said. "And that sounds better than anything else I can imagine." Paloma studied him for another long moment. Then slowly, tentatively, she leaned forward and pressed her forehead to his. Quinn stood perfectly still, barely breathing, afraid to shatter the moment. They stayed like that, sharing breath and warmth, and it felt like a promise deeper than words. When Paloma finally pulled back, there were tears on her cheeks, but she was smiling, and Quinn thought it was the most beautiful thing he had ever seen. "Okay," she said. "You stay. We see if soft Cowboy can really learn to be desert man." Quinn laughed, joy bubbling up inside him like a spring. "I will prove it to you. I will learn everything you can teach, and I will never give you reason to regret this." "You better not," Paloma said, but her eyes were warm. "Now sleep. Tomorrow I teach you which snakes are most dangerous and how to catch them. Catch them. Good protein. Taste like chicken." Quinn groaned and Paloma laughed, the sound bright and free, and Quinn thought that if he never heard another beautiful thing for the rest of his life, that laugh would be enough. The weeks turned into months, and Quinn proved his commitment with every passing day. Paloma taught him to tan leather properly, to make rope from plant fibers, to construct shelters that would keep out rain and sun. She taught him the Apache language, laughing at his clumsy pronunciation but patient in her corrections. She taught him about the medicinal properties of dozens of desert plants, which could cure fever, which could treat wounds, which could ease pain. And slowly, carefully, they taught each other about love. It grew between them like a desert bloom, unexpected and precious. Quinn learned that Paloma sang to herself in the mornings in Apache, songs her mother had taught her about the land and the people. He learned that she was ticklish behind her knees, that she loved thunderstorms, that she had a weakness for honey when they could find it. He learned that beneath her fierce independence was a woman who had been desperately lonely, who craved connection but had taught herself not to need it, because needing things only led to pain. Paloma learned that Quinn had a gift for languages and picked up Apache faster than she expected. She learned that he was patient and gentle, that he listened when she spoke about her mother and her lost people with true empathy rather than pity. She learned that he had nightmares sometimes about his family, and that when she held him afterward, the shaking would gradually stop. She learned that he meant what he said, that he truly wanted this life with her, that he was not going to leave when things got hard. 5 months after Quinn stumbled into her life, Paloma led him on a 3-day journey to a place she had never shown anyone else. It was a hidden valley, green and lush by desert standards, with a spring that never ran dry and enough foliage to support game year-round. "This is place my mother find when she leave reservation," Paloma explained as they stood overlooking the valley. "She bring me here as child, tell me this is our land, our secret place. She want to live here but afraid someone find us. But I think maybe now we could build something here. Together." Quinn looked at the valley, at the possibilities it represented, and then at Paloma, at the hope and vulnerability in her eyes. "We could build a real home," he said. "Not just a shelter, but a place to put down roots, grow things, raise animals maybe, make a life." "You want that?" Paloma asked. "Truly. Give up everything to be here with me, living like Apache, hiding from world." Quinn took both her hands in his. "I am not giving up anything. I am gaining everything. Paloma, these months with you have been the best of my life. You have taught me how to survive, but also how to live, really live. You have given me purpose and home and love. If you will have me, I want to spend the rest of my life learning from you, building with you, loving you." Paloma's eyes filled with tears. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I want that too. I want you, Quinn. I want this life with you." Quinn kissed her then properly for the first time, and it felt like coming home and setting out on an adventure all at once. Paloma kissed him back with a passion that matched his own, her hands fisting in his shirt, and when they finally broke apart they were both breathing hard. "We should marry," Quinn said. "I know we cannot go to a church or have a proper ceremony, but we could do it in your way, the Apache way." Paloma smiled through her tears. "Apache marriage is simple. Man and woman choose each other, build dwelling together. That is marriage. No need for white man paper or priest blessing. But if you want ceremony, we do one. Make vows to each other, to land, to spirits of this place." "I want that," Quinn said. "I want to vow myself to you in every way that matters." They spent the next month building their home in the hidden valley. Quinn felled trees and Paloma showed him how to construct a wickiup in the traditional Apache style, a dome-shaped structure covered in brush and hides that would stay cool in summer and could be warmed with a small fire in winter. They built a corral for horses Quinn planned to catch and gentle. They planted a small garden with seeds Paloma had been saving, corn and beans and squash. They made the valley theirs. On a night when the moon was full and the desert bloomed with night-flowering cacti, they stood before the fire and made their vows. Paloma spoke first in Apache, her voice clear and strong, pledging her life and her heart to Quinn, promising to walk beside him for all their days. Then Quinn spoke in his halting Apache, the words Paloma had taught him, promising to honor her always, to protect and provide, to love her with everything he was. They blessed each other with water from the spring, with pollen from the mesquite trees, with smoke from the sacred fire. And when it was done, Paloma took Quinn's hand and led him into their new home, and they made their marriage complete under the roof they had built together. Life in the valley was hard but good. They rose with the sun and worked through the cooler morning hours, tending their garden, hunting, gathering, maintaining their home. In the heat of the day they rested in the shade, and Quinn would practice his Apache or Paloma would teach him new skills. Evenings were for cooking together, for talking about their days, for sitting close by the fire and watching the stars emerge. Quinn grew lean and brown from the sun, his hands calloused from work, his body hard with muscle. The soft cowboy Paloma had mocked was gone, replaced by a man who could track a deer for 3 days, who could survive on nothing but what the land provided, who could live in harmony with the desert rather than in spite of it. Paloma bloomed under the security of their partnership. The tension she had carried for so long eased, and she laughed more, smiled more, allowed herself to be soft sometimes, because she knew Quinn would be strong for both of them when needed. She taught him everything she knew and in turn learned from him, the cowboy skills he brought, the songs of his childhood, the stories of his people that were now her people too. They did venture to towns occasionally, always carefully, always with Quinn going alone while Paloma waited at a safe distance. He would sell the leather goods they made, buy supplies they could not make or find, gather news of the outside world. The news was rarely good. The Apache wars were ending, the people being forced onto reservations, the old ways dying. Each time Quinn returned with these reports, Paloma would be quiet for days, mourning her people even as she remained committed to her choice to live free. "I cannot save them," she told Quinn one night as they lay together under the stars. "Cannot change what is happening, but I can live the way my mother wanted, the way my people lived for generations. I can keep the knowledge alive, teach it to you, maybe someday to our children. That is how I honor them." "Children?" Quinn asked, his heart leaping. Paloma turned to look at him, her eyes soft in the moonlight. "You not want children?" "I want everything with you," Quinn said, gathering her close. "Children most of all, a family, a real family again." "Nothing would make me happier." "Then we make family," Paloma said simply. "We bring new life into this valley, teach them the old ways and new ways, Apache and white together. Maybe that is answer, maybe that is hope." 8 months after their marriage ceremony, Paloma told Quinn she was pregnant. He whooped with joy and spun her in a circle until she laughed and swatted at him to put her down. They spent the next months preparing, gathering extra supplies, making the dwelling as comfortable as possible, doing everything they could to ensure a safe birth. When the time came in the spring of 1879, Paloma labored through the night with Quinn beside her, holding her hand, giving her water, supporting her in every way he could. She had taught him what to expect, how to help, and when their son finally entered the world as dawn broke over the valley, Quinn caught him with shaking hands and wept as he placed the squalling infant on Paloma's chest. "He is perfect," Paloma whispered, exhausted but radiant. "He is ours." They named him Quentin, a blend of both their names, and called him Little Q. He had his mother's dark eyes and his father's chin, and from the beginning he was curious and stubborn and bright. Quinn marveled at him constantly, at the miracle of his existence, at the family they had built in this hidden valley. Paloma recovered from the birth and proved to be a natural mother, fierce in her protection and tender in her care. Quinn learned to comfort a crying baby, to change swaddling cloths, to walk endless circles around the dwelling singing lullabies his own mother had sung. They took turns with the night feedings, shared the work, and somehow managed to be partners in this new adventure just as they had been in everything else. As Little Q grew, he became the joy of their lives. He took his first steps at 9 months, determined to keep up with his parents as they worked. He spoke early, mixing Apache and English in a way that charmed them both. And he soaked up knowledge like the earth soaked up rain, watching everything, asking endless questions, learning. When Little Q was 2, Paloma became pregnant again. This time she gave birth to a daughter they named Paloma Rose, Rose after Quinn's lost sister. She was gentler than her brother, thoughtful where he was impulsive, but every bit as bright and curious. Their family complete, Quinn and Paloma settled into a rhythm that felt eternal. They taught their children everything, the Apache ways and the white ways, survival skills and book learning from the few books Quinn had managed to acquire on his town visits. Little Q learned to track before he could write his name, and Rose could identify medicinal plants by the time she was 3. The children grew up wild and free, knowing nothing of the prejudices that divided the world beyond their valley. To them, it was perfectly natural to speak two languages, to learn from both their parents' traditions, to be part of both worlds and beholden to neither. They were something new, something hopeful, a bridge between cultures that had been at war. As the years passed, Quinn and Paloma grew older together, their love deepening with every season. They faced hard times, years when the rains did not come and they had to survive on stored food and what little the desert could provide. They faced illness, injuries, the constant challenges of living off the land. But they faced it all together, and that made all the difference. Quinn never regretted his choice, not once in all the years. He thought sometimes about the life he might have had, the ranch he might have owned, the place in white society he might have carved out. But it all felt hollow compared to what he had found. He had a home, a family, a purpose. He had the love of an extraordinary woman and the respect of his children. He had learned to truly see the desert, to understand it, to be part of it rather than separate from it. Paloma never regretted her choice either. She had been so afraid to trust, to love, to allow herself to hope for more than survival. But Quinn had proven worthy of that trust over and over again. He had embraced her world completely, had honored her people and her ways, had given her everything she never dared to dream of. Together they had built something precious, a life that honored both their heritages while being entirely their own. When little Q was 15 and Rose was 13, Quinn took them both on a long journey to show them the outside world they had been sheltered from. They visited Tucson, where Quinn had nearly died all those years ago, and the children saw for the first time the prejudice and fear that governed relations between Apache and white. They saw the reservations where Apache people lived in poverty and despair, their spirit broken. They saw white towns where Apache people were not welcome, where they would have been in danger. "This is why we live as we do," Paloma told her children that night as they camped far from town. "This is why we choose our valley, our life. Out there, people cannot see past color of skin, past fear and hate. They cannot see person, cannot see heart. But in our valley, we are free to be fully who we are." "We understand, Mother," little Q said solemnly, "and we are grateful." "Will it always be this way?" Rose asked. "Will there never be peace?" "Maybe not in our lifetime," Quinn said honestly. "But maybe in yours, in your children's. Change happens slow, but it happens. You are proof of that, both of you. You carry both worlds inside you. Maybe someday there will be more like you. Enough that the divisions do not matter anymore." They returned to the valley with renewed appreciation for what they had, and the children threw themselves into learning even more about their heritage, both Apache and white, determined to carry it all forward. More years passed. Little Q grew into a strong young man who could survive anywhere, in any conditions. He was as comfortable in the desert as his mother, as good with horses as his father. Rose grew into a beautiful young woman with healing hands and a gift for languages. She spoke Apache, English, and Spanish, and had a curiosity about the world beyond the valley that both excited and worried her parents. When little Q was 20, he met an Apache girl on one of the rare occasions when they encountered other people living free in the desert. Her name was Singing Bird, and she was alone, having escaped from a reservation. Little Q brought her home, and after a few months during which Paloma taught her and Quinn came to respect her, Little Q and Singing Bird married in the same way Quinn and Paloma had, with vows spoken under the stars. They built their own dwelling on the other side of the valley, close enough for support but far enough for independence, and within a year, Paloma and Quinn were grandparents to a squalling baby girl. They held their granddaughter with tears in their eyes, amazed by the continuation of the line they had started, the family they had built against all odds. Rose, meanwhile, talked increasingly of going into the world, of using her skills to help people, of being a bridge between communities. It terrified Paloma, the thought of her daughter out there in danger, but Quinn counseled patience. "She is like you," he told Paloma one night as they watched Rose tend the garden. "Strong, determined, with a purpose that cannot be denied. We cannot hold her here any more than I could have made you come to town all those years ago. We can only trust that we have taught her well." When Rose was 21, she left the valley with her parents' blessing and their fears. She went to work at a mission school near one of the reservations, teaching and healing, using everything her parents had taught her. It was dangerous work, heartbreaking work, but she thrived in it. She visited the valley twice a year, bringing news and supplies, and each time she seemed more certain of her path. Quinn and Paloma grew old together in their valley, their hair graying, their movements slower, but their love as strong as ever. They had grandchildren now, 4 from little Q and Singing Bird, and they passed on their knowledge to the next generation just as it had been passed to them. On Quinn's 50th birthday, Paloma took him to the spot where she had first saved him, all those years ago. They stood in the desert heat, holding hands, looking at the place where everything had changed. "You remember?" Paloma asked. "Stupid white cowboy who could not survive 1 week," Quinn laughed. "I remember. And I remember thinking even then that you were the most magnificent person I had ever seen. You not think that, you half dead from heat." "I thought it," Quinn insisted, "and I was right. You are magnificent. You saved me in every way a person can be saved. You taught me how to live, really live. You gave me everything." Paloma leaned her head on his shoulder. "You taught me too, taught me to trust again, to love again, to believe in something more than just survival. You gave me family, home, happiness. You kept every promise you made that night by the fire." "We kept them to each other," Quinn corrected. "Everything we built together." They stood there as the sun set, painting the desert in those familiar shades of orange and gold, and Quinn thought about the long, strange journey that had brought him here. He had set out looking for land, for something to own, for a place to matter. And he had found all of that, but not in the way he expected. He did not own the desert. The desert owned him, had claimed him, had made him part of itself through Paloma's teachings and his own determination. He belonged here now, to this land and this woman and this life they had made. His children and grandchildren carried that belonging in their blood, a bridge between worlds, proof that love could transcend the divisions that men drew. It was not a perfect solution to the injustices and horrors of the world beyond their valley, but it was their solution, their answer, their hope. As they walked back toward home, Quinn felt nothing but profound gratitude. He had survived the desert, yes, but more than that, he had learned to thrive in it, to love it, to see its fierce beauty the way Paloma did. He had learned that home was not a place you found, but something you built, one day at a time, one choice at a time, with someone you loved beside you. The valley spread below them in the fading light, their dwelling visible, smoke rising from little Cutica's home, children playing by the spring. It was a small corner of the world, hidden and secret, but it was theirs. They had carved it out of nothing, had defended it with everything they had, and they had filled it with love. "Come on, old man," Paloma said, tugging his hand. "Rose arrives tomorrow. We need to prepare feast." "I am not old," Quinn protested. "I am seasoned." Paloma laughed, the sound as bright and free as it had been 30 years ago when he first heard it. "Seasoned like old leather. Come, before you scare the horses with your ancient bones." Quinn chased her down the path, both of them laughing like children, and when he caught her, he spun her around just like he had when she told him she was pregnant with little Q. She was older now, lines around her eyes and silver in her hair, but to Quinn she was as beautiful as the day he met her. More beautiful because now he knew every facet of her, every strength and vulnerability, every dream and fear. He knew her completely, and he loved her entirely, and that would never change. That evening, as they prepared for Rose's visit, Quinn watched Paloma work and felt his heart swell with love so profound it almost hurt. She was singing softly in Apache, one of her mother's songs, and Quinn joined in with his accented but enthusiastic voice. Paloma smiled at him, her eyes warm, and Quinn knew that every hard day, every sacrifice, every moment of struggle had been worth it for this. For her. For them. For the family they had built and the life they had chosen. Later, as they lay together under the stars the way they had countless nights before, Paloma spoke into the darkness. "Quinn, do you ever wonder how different life would be if I had not found you that day?" "I would be dead," Quinn said simply. "Bones bleaching in the desert somewhere, forgotten. Maybe someone else would have found you. Maybe. But they would not have been you, and I would not have found my home, my purpose, my heart. Everything that matters in my life came from that moment you decided to save one stupid white cowboy." "Not so stupid anymore," Paloma said, and he could hear the smile in her voice. "You survive almost as good as Apache now." "High praise," Quinn said, laughing. Then seriously, "I love you, Paloma. I will love you until the day I die and beyond if the spirits allow it." "I love you too," Paloma whispered. "You are my heart, Quinn Callahan. You are my home." They fell asleep like that, wrapped around each other under the vast desert sky. And if their sleep was deeper, their rest more complete, their dreams more peaceful than most people ever knew, it was because they had found what so few people ever found. They had found each other. They had built a life based on respect and love and shared purpose. They had survived together, thrived together, created a legacy together. The desert wind blew soft over the valley, carrying the scent of sage and creosote, and two hearts beat in time, proof that love could flourish even in the harshest places, if tended with care and watered with devotion. The Apache woman had taught the cowboy how to survive, but together they had learned something far more important. They had learned how to truly live. Rose arrived the next afternoon, riding a strong paint horse and leading a pack horse loaded with supplies. She brought news from the outside world, some of it good, much of it troubling, but she brought something else too. Hope. She told them about the children she taught, Apache and Mexican and white, learning together. About the slowly growing acceptance, the small bridges being built between communities, about the seeds of change that were taking root. "It is slow," Rose admitted as they sat around the fire that night, the whole family gathered. "So slow sometimes it feels like nothing changes at all. But then I see a white child and an Apache child playing together, or a mixed family like ours being accepted into a community, and I know it is happening. The world is changing, Father, Mother. What you built here, what you taught us, it matters beyond this valley." Quinn and Paloma exchanged glances, and in that look was a lifetime of understanding. They had not set out to change the world. They had only sought to survive, to love, to build something good in a hard place. But maybe that was how change always happened. One person at a time. One family at a time. One choice at a time. Little Cutica's oldest daughter, now 7, climbed into Quinn's lap. "Grandfather, tell us the story again, about how you and grandmother met." Quinn looked at Paloma, who nodded, smiling. And so he told the story again, as he had told it 100 times before and would tell it 100 times more. The story of the cowboy who nearly died in the desert, and the Apache woman who saved him and taught him everything he needed to know. The story of how two people from different worlds had built a bridge with their love, a bridge their children and grandchildren now crossed freely. As he spoke, Quinn held his granddaughter close and looked around at the family gathered in the firelight. At Paloma, still beautiful, still fierce, still his heart. At little Q and singing birds, strong and capable, raising their children with wisdom and love. At Rose, bright and determined, carrying their legacy out into the world. At the grandchildren, perfect blends of two peoples, proof that something new and good could grow from respect and understanding and love. This was what they had built. Not just a home in a hidden valley, but a family that embodied hope for a better future. Not a denial of the past or the injustices that had been done, but an acknowledgement that people could choose differently, love across divides, build something better together. The stars wheeled overhead, the same stars that had witnessed countless Apache camps, countless cowboy trails, countless loves and losses and lives lived under the vast western sky. And in their hidden valley, protected and cherished, Quinn and Paloma's family thrived, proof that the best survival skill of all was love. The kind of love that respected differences while celebrating what was shared. The kind of love that taught and learned in equal measure. The kind of love that built rather than destroyed, that created bridges instead of walls. Quinn finished his story and the children applauded, demanding another. Paloma laughed and told them it was time for bed, and there was the usual protest and negotiation that came with children. But eventually they were settled, the fire was banked, and the family dispersed to their separate dwellings. Quinn and Paloma walked slowly back to their home, hand in hand, moving at the pace of people who knew they had all the time in the world because they had already found everything they were searching for. The night was cool and clear, perfect, and Quinn sent up a silent prayer of thanks to whatever spirits or forces had guided his stumbling path to this woman, this place, this life. "Happy?" Paloma asked, as she had asked 1,000 times before. "Always," Quinn answered, as he always did. "With you, always." They went inside their home, the home they had built together, and closed the door on the night. Outside, the desert stretched vast and eternal, indifferent to the small human dramas played out on its surface. But in one hidden valley, love had taken root and flourished, and the desert itself seemed to acknowledge this small miracle with the gentle wind that rustled through the mesquite trees like a blessing. Years continued to pass, as years do, bringing change and challenge, but also joy and growth. Quinn and Paloma grew older, their bodies showing the wear of hard living but their spirits as strong as ever. They had lived to see their grandchildren grow, had watched Rose become a force for good in the world, had seen little Q become a leader in the small community of free Apache that had gathered over the years in the surrounding desert. They had survived together. They had thrived together. And when the time came, years later, they would die together too, peacefully in their sleep, wrapped in each other's arms in the home they had built. Their children and grandchildren would mourn them, but also celebrate them, knowing that Quinn and Paloma had lived exactly the way they wanted to live, had loved exactly the way they wanted to love, and had left a legacy that would continue for generations. But that end was still many years away. For now, on this perfect desert night, Quinn and Paloma simply held each other and counted themselves blessed. They had found what so many searched for and never found. They had found home in each other, purpose in their shared life, and a love that transcended every difference the world said should divide them. The Apache woman had taught the cowboy her ways. And the cowboy had proven worthy of those teachings, had honored them, had built a life that respected and celebrated everything she had shown him. Together they had created something new and precious, a family and a legacy that proved love could conquer hatred, that understanding could bridge divides, that two people from different worlds could build one world together if they were brave enough to try. In their hidden valley, under the vast western sky, two hearts beat as one. And that was enough. That was everything. That was the whole story, the only story that ever really mattered. The story of how the Apache woman and the cowboy found each other, taught each other, loved each other, and built a life together that honored both their peoples while being entirely their own. It was a story of survival and love, of learning and teaching, of holding fast to what mattered while letting go of what did not. It was their story, unique and precious, and it would endure long after they were gone, carried forward by the children and grandchildren they had raised with such care and love. This was the legacy Quinn and Paloma left behind, not riches or fame or land holdings, but something far more valuable. They left behind proof that love could flourish in the harshest places, that two people could choose each other across every divide, and that a life built on respect and shared purpose was the richest life of all. And in the end, that was the greatest survival skill the Apache woman had taught the cowboy. That survival meant nothing if you had no one to survive for, no one to build a life with, no one to love with your whole heart. Quinn had learned that lesson well, and he had spent every day of his life since proving he understood it. As dawn broke over the valley the next morning, painting everything in shades of rose and gold, Quinn and Paloma rose together to greet the new day. There was work to be done, always work, but they faced it together as they had faced everything for over 30 years. Hand in hand, heart to heart, partners in every sense of the word. This was their life. This was their love. This was their happily ever after, earned through hardship and commitment, through learning and teaching, through choosing each other every single day. And it was perfect.